What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. Hi, and welcome to today's Inflammation Investigator. Today, we're going to talk about alopecia and hair loss, and it's going to be a very wide-ranging, fascinating conversation, especially when we talk about how that connects to autoimmunity and chronic inflammation. So I'm so excited to introduce you to Johanna Dahlman. She is the leading expert in natural hair growth. She is a professional international speaker and podcast host to the Alopecia Angel podcast, Awaken to Hair Growth. Through her own struggle with autoimmune alopecia, she now helps thousands worldwide reverse and heal hair loss naturally without the need for medication. This defies the odds within various types of hair loss, and we're going to get all into those various types of hair loss. She serves thousands of children and adults in over 67 countries. She focuses on various types of hair loss, including autoimmune, androgenic, diffuse, telogen, let's see if I can say this word, effluvium, scarring, and others. She says 90% see hair growth in less than 8 weeks. So, Johanna, welcome to the Inflammation Investigator.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Very excited. So why don't we start with your story? How did you get into doing what you do?
So, in my situation, I also was diagnosed with the autoimmune alopecia. It started with alopecia areata. And yes, you can have 2 types of alopecia, which is the medical term for hair loss. So, there are 2 different types of hair loss all at the same time. I was in my peak 30s and extremely fit, had a personal trainer, lived in Miami, was living my best life until I was diagnosed at the hair salon. And yes, hairstylists can diagnose you. They have about a paragraph or so in their beauty school, and they can go ahead and diagnose you. And that's where I was diagnosed. That day changed the trajectory of my life, amongst others, but that one was very, very in particular the situation. I was getting my routine highlights done. My stylist of over 30 years had said to me, Johanna, you have alopecia, go see a doctor. And those were probably the worst words and the worst advice he could have given me, because from there, I'm in the chair with the foils in my head and I'm just looking online to see what is alopecia. I had never heard of this term before. Mind you, this was over 10 years ago. So it's one of those things where now it's almost common knowledge. Before it wasn't. And
Mhm.
so I started looking and I also started crying. And what I was reading was very negative. As a positive person who always looks at the bright side, half full type of living situation, I never realized how bad this could be or how it could get. And so there was always this lingering shadow and cloud over anyone who was diagnosed with the autoimmune alopecia and also scarring alopecia too. It's this no cure label that you're automatically given. It's this no cure possibility. And really going to go see a doctor only led me to a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth doctor in different states, in different countries, trying to see what my options were. And when I realized that these options didn't align with me or my future goals of having a family or my future goals of being a mom and taking care of my fertility, not having any side effects and not having any negative ramifications of the medications, I said, no, these are not good enough answers. And it doesn't make sense that if I always had big curly hair, why all of a sudden would I just start losing it when I'm the healthiest, when I'm the healthiest in my family, of my friend group, I'm in my 30s, like everything's going right for me except for this one piece of the puzzle. And so, coming from a tech background, I had worked at Apple. I was working at Apple at the time, and I wanted to see how I could understand and then also create another option for myself. I knew there was a way, it just hadn't been laid out for me. And so, this is what created that journey of 3.5, 4 years to truly not only regain my hair, but to also keep it for over 10 years now, regardless of COVID, regardless of stressful times, regardless of having my first baby at 40, regardless of, all these changes that life gives you.
Hmm.
I've shortened a lot of my story here because in between I was moving to Europe. From Europe, we moved to Japan, and from Japan, we moved back to the US. This all happened within a short amount of time, and really, stressful times and things happen in life, and it's really about us riding the wave and understanding our own bodies and our own capacities to withstand certain issues and certain things in life and really reframing. But more than that, it's really getting to root causes. And so this is what led me not only to heal myself, but then to not just be quiet. Because once I started seeing the healing, once I started to see and feel the hair growth and the changes and all those ancillary symptoms that people don't talk about that are interrelated with alopecia or with any other autoimmune disease, I started realizing it was all connected because literally they just washed off from one night to the next morning. They were all gone. And what I had realized is I'm at a fork in the road. I have the opportunity now in here to either, keep my mouth shut, be quiet, and go on to live my happy, ever-ending life, or I can at least write a book about it and get the message out that healing is possible. And I did that. This book is no longer on the market. I'm actually coming out with an updated book because, as you can imagine, 10 years of working with people and research has, it's been outdated. But at the same time, Alopecia Angel was born. And this is really a call to action to understand and have people realize that being diagnosed with any type of autoimmune disease, but more so alopecia, is not something that you need to embrace. It's not something that you need to settle for. It's not something that you need to accept. It's not even something like a diagnosis that quote unquote will lead you to that destiny. It has nothing to do with that. It's actually giving you a choice. And it's a choice in healing. It's a choice in the possibility of reversing this. It's a choice in really taking a deeper look at what the root causes are, what's, behind all this, how we can improve and how we can do better. And if anything, it's not a life sentence, it's really a life lesson. And I think that's the biggest take home message here is that regardless of the diagnosis, there is a way to work backwards to create another option, even if your doctor's not giving it to you, so that you can heal and be in remission, so that you can heal and live your best life. If we can put cancer into remission, why not an autoimmune disease? We've seen it multiple times with different people and inspiring celebrities, so to speak, depending how you view them, of people who have reversed MS, alopecia, and so many other chronic quote unquote diseases that have quote unquote no cure. And so my last podcast was about this because it's so disrupting to hear that something has no cure. It really it's a gut punch to our soul, to our mindset, to our psyche, to our mental and emotional well-being. It really puts you in this state of fear. And if you start looking at the last 10, 20 years, it almost seems like this state of fear is something that everyone wants you to feel. everyone wants to put you in, whether it's the news, whether it's the economy, the politics, you name it. It's this constant fear and uncertainty that really what I'm here to say is that we can take back that control. We can do better for ourselves and make better choices. And if you're a parent listening to this and your son or your grandchild has alopecia, they're not doomed for life. They can go on to have the best life ever. And really, it's about change. When we change, we see a different perspective. We see a new possibility. And of course, everything else has a ripple effect into that.
That's such a good point. I feel like many people's exposure to alopecia and that word alopecia may just be through somebody like Jada Pinkett Smith, who
Yes.
has come out with her own alopecia diagnosis and chose to shave off all of her hair as opposed to try to reverse it. But let's talk about what does alopecia mean? What are the types of alopecia?
So alopecia is the medical term for hair loss. This is one big umbrella of various different types of hair loss. This could include telogen effluvium, which would more than likely be your stress induced or your hormonal changes. Maybe this could look like postpartum. This could be maybe after a flu or maybe after, let's say, a stressful time. Maybe it was finals week for college students or anyone going through education of any sort. And so then after that period is done, after that stressful period is done, then your hair goes back to normal. That's telogen effluvium. It's also called diffuse, where it's just all over. And then you also have other types, which is scarring. And underneath scarring, you have different types, frontal fibrosing, you have LLP, CCCA. These are all different types of scarring alopecia. The scarring alopecia is almost like a forest fire. You want to catch it sooner rather than later because, just like the title, it can scar the follicle. So once it's scarred, you have a less likelihood of regaining that hair. Now, have I seen people heal from scarring alopecia and see hair growth? Absolutely. Now, the areas where it's already scarred, again, the less likelihood and the possibility. But for the areas that haven't, let's go ahead and promote that and support that so that it can continue to flourish. And so that's scarring in a nutshell. Then you have autoimmune, which is what I had, alopecia areata, which can graduate to totalis. Alopecia areata is designated with round patches that could start in the beard for men, and it normally starts in the head for everyone in general. Totalis is where you're completely bald on the head. For men, again, no beard. It would just be all patches that just connect the dots like a cheetah, and you start to lose eyebrows and eyelashes. Alopecia universalis is that last graduating step, and this is where you lose all body hair. On the chest, on the arms, legs, everywhere, eyebrows, nostrils, you name it, everything. And when it heals, you actually go backwards. So you start from alopecia universalis, let's say if you're there, go back to totalis, go back to areata, and then you go back to full growth. So it's almost like, a time lapse video where you go forward and you go backward, and that's the healing process. And a lot of times people think of hair growth like grass. It's all growing at the same time. It's all growing all at the same level. And with autoimmune and even with scarring, that's not the case. It grows in a different pattern and in a different cycle. And really, it's about you. The more you promote the strategy, the approach that you're doing, the more and the better the hair growth. And I will say there are a lot of myths when it comes to hair growth. A lot of people think, oh, there's no cure because it's been 20, 30, 40 years. And I'm here to tell you that age and how long it's been have nothing to do with hair growth. Just like you can learn a language early on as a toddler, or you can learn a language in your 80s. There's nothing stopping you from learning a language. And in many ways, this is like learning a new language. It's a diet and lifestyle change. And really, when you start honing in onto all the important factors, then you can start to see the health benefits, the hair growth, and everything come back to homeostasis, which is a balanced state. And this is where we want to be. And in regards to other types of hair loss, we have female pattern baldness, which is normally addressed here in the crown, where you start to see, let's say, the scalp a little bit more. You have this for males and also for females. Androgenic is the exact title. And they also say that there's no cure for this, but there are ways to mitigate it. There are ways to help, for men and for women, and it looks a little differently for each one. And as you can imagine, even for alopecia medications, there's going to be some that are designated for men and some designated for women. It's not always going to be the same. But I will tell you is that if you are going to the doctor and if you're only maybe like me, seeing one, two, three, four, five doctors, the only thing they're going to be able to do for you is prescribe medications. So if you don't want medications, then you need to look into the natural and holistic route because that was the route that gave me my hair and which has for the last 10 years. And really it's about supporting the body. And when we do that, everything is upgraded, everything flourishes, everything goes back to balance.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if people listening can actually see you on their video feed, but wow, your hair is full and gorgeous. It doesn't look like you have any hair loss issues yourself. I did myself go through some hair loss after each pregnancy. It just seemed like whew, lots of hair going out, but not having any lingering effects from that. How do you know what kind of hair loss you have and what the next step should be to address it?
Good question. I actually had a call from a potential client the other day about this. Um, there's a couple things. You could describe, let's say to me, if we were to have a consultation, what this looks like. You can send in pictures, and I could easily place you and assume from everything that I'm discussing with you and, be able to diagnose you. The other thing you could do is go see a dermatologist and get that diagnosis. Now, there's a caveat to that. Let me just put a little caveat to that. For scarring, this needs and requires a biopsy. So this is really necessary if potentially you may fear that it is, or you maybe you have it run in your family, or maybe you're just part of this ethnic category that is more susceptible to a certain type of scarring alopecia. You want to know this sooner rather than later. You don't want to linger and wait. And this is where speaking with a dermatologist who can opt for a biopsy would be your best bet. Because once you have either an autoimmune, which is really easy to identify with these round patches, very clear. Alopecia universalis totalis, androgenic is also very clear. Telogen effluvium, long COVID, diffuse, these are also very clear. But when it comes to scarring, this can look a little different. And so you want to be able to diagnose this and take action sooner rather than later because we want to get ahead of this forest fire, as I call it.
Yes. And so there's no way to know yourself if you have scarring? There's not visible scars or lumps on your scalp?
Well, as someone who's never had scarring, what I hear from my clients is that they've allowed, and this is really all clients across the board, they've allowed their situation progress. Either they didn't make themselves a priority, or maybe they were talking to the wrong doctors, or maybe they were given the runaround, or maybe their healthcare is just not as great as it should be. As someone who's lived abroad in various countries, I've experienced very, very poor healthcare, even in Europe. And when Americans, we see Europeans as the grass is greener, and I'm here to tell you it's not that way. In terms of healthcare, it's not that way. I prefer a choice. I prefer, being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it versus asking for permission and then being denied. And so that's just a nutshell of what you'll get in Europe because not every request is afforded. Not every request is given to you, even if you want to pay out of pocket. Sometimes that's not possible in a universal system or in a, socialist type system. It's just not available to you. So going back to your original question, can someone self-diagnose their scarring? It would be better to have that biopsy because again, by the time they've come to me, by the time they've actually said, okay, I have time and space now, it's already been at least a decade. And this is
Mm.
actually quite common. The thing is, when women in general, or even maybe even men, they let the hair growth or the hair fall progress, thinking, oh, maybe it'll just grow back on its own. And,
Uh-huh.
and I tell you that because that's what I did. When I was
Uh-huh.
diagnosed, it started very small in the back. And because it was in the back and because I've always had so much hair, I didn't think twice about it. I was like, oh, maybe it'll just grow back. It didn't. It didn't. It just kept, shedding more and more. And I kept getting more and more spots in the back. And so this is the thing. It just doesn't get better on its own. But because maybe you've tried some supplements, you go to Target or you go to the pharmacy and you try some minoxidil, you try this and you try that, or you look up online, you're talking to ChatGPT and you're trying all these different serums and hair potions and supplements, you're thinking you're making headway when in reality, you're stalling the progress and you're making it worse. And so this is the mindset and the mind frame of the consumer and the client and the patient who is going through hair loss. It's because we've been indoctrinated by the pharmaceutical industry and also by the beauty industry, thinking that our answer lies in one pill, thinking that our answers lie in a serum, in a Rogaine, in a Nutrafol, in a Viviscal, in a Monat shampoo, when all these one size fits all approaches are not going to fix your situation. I can guarantee you that. It will not. And what worked in the past will more than likely not work in the future when it comes to all these gimmicks, as I like to call them. And this is why that trajectory to actually start working with somebody who truly understands the field, truly understands how to propel you and catapult you into full hair growth in less time, you're at your wit's end normally by the time you come to me. And it's been 10, 5, 15, maybe 20 years that this has been ongoing and things have not improved, even though you think you're doing all the things and you're not. And so this is also a clear case of why you would want a diagnosis, why you would want that biopsy sooner rather than later. The biopsy is very small. So once, they take that to the lab, in less than a week, you're going to have your answer. And then from there, you can take action and take that next step, that next route of where you want to go. Because if it is, let's say, just telogen effluvium or postpartum or long COVID or diffuse, this can be easily mitigated. The hair shedding inside the Hair and Heal program stops within week 1 to week 6. I've had people who've had years, decades of hair shedding, and it stops in 1 week. And that's just the power of your biology. That's the power of diet and lifestyle. That's the power of just making certain tweaks to put the body on halt, to make them stop. And that's the beauty of it, is like you can stop this hair shedding in less time and the hair growth will come right after or soon after. And so this is also the key too, because if you keep shedding, then you're going to have a longer, pace into which to get back to a normal standard of full hair per se, or full hair growth. And so there are some hair types that grow a lot quicker versus others. And so this is where you can see much more results. I think that's what we're all looking for when it comes to hair growth. We want results. But I guarantee you that the medications, they backfire, they have side effects, there's many risks. A lot of them are extremely expensive. 6, 9, 10, $15,000 a month out of
Wow.
pocket. And that's, I mean, that's a business. I don't know how else to say it. That's a business, and it's not giving you the full benefits. Even if healthcare were to take, cover some of that, still that's a daunting amount for you to still not be able to understand your root causes and why this is happening. And so always ask yourself why, because this way we can get back to the deeper work, because there's always something bigger and deeper lingering behind.
That's such a good point. And I think it's similar probably to every autoimmune condition. There's just something bigger and deeper lingering underneath that you have to address without that before you can actually experience true healing. So tell me, your program, your hair regrowth program, what are the foundational steps? What do people go through when they join that program?
So we do a personalized evaluation, which again, we take out this one size fits all, because it's never a one size fits all. The way you treat somebody in her 60s postmenopausal versus somebody in her 40s who potentially is pregnant, breastfeeding, or trying to conceive versus somebody in their 20s who's maybe in college, living in a dorm. with no access to a kitchen, or potentially a child who's 5 years old, even if they all had the same type of hair loss, the diet, the lifestyle, the way you treat them, everything would look so different. So the evaluation part is so key because what I like to look at, again, because I was in these same shoes, is that I not only wanted my hair to grow back, I also wanted to get pregnant. I also wanted to be a mom. I also had these other goals, and so not everybody wants to get pregnant. Not everybody wants to be a mom, but potentially there are other goals that are bigger than just the hair. And so, or there's a second or a third or a fourth autoimmune disease, or there's other ancillary health conditions. Maybe they're on medications, maybe they've had cancer. I've had numerous cancer patients who they're in remission from cancer, and then lo and behold, alopecia areata pops up. And so this is where we work with them. But again, that way and that tailored approach is going to look different than just the person who just has hair loss or just has one type of hair loss and not these other conditions to take into consideration for. And so I think this is the bigger piece of it is that evaluation. We also offer functional medicine testing, DNA testing. We are looking at your diet and lifestyle. We are looking at your cellular optimization. We are looking at your mitochondria and that health. We're all looking at your DNA and those results and to see what it is that your DNA says, and let's marry that to what's happening today. And so there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. It's never just one or two pieces. It's never just diet. If this was all just diet, then we would have zero obesity in the world. And that's simply not true. And so it's never just diet. It's never just lifestyle. It's really looking at all the pieces and parts to this because it is a 1,000-piece puzzle. And so when you have somebody who can guide you and walk you through each step of the way without creating overwhelm, this is where success happens.
So, what do you see as the connection between hair loss and inflammation?
Hair loss and inflammation. Well, the thing is, inflammation comes from so many areas. It's almost like saying um, maybe even plastic nowadays, just having plastic in our food, in our water, or even toxins of any sort. If we started to get into this, rabbit hole, it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous. And so this is why I think, and I can almost be assured of it, that this is why there would be no one size fits all cure for everybody. And this is why there is no one pill, no JAK inhibitor, no cortisone shot, no this, no that, that will heal everybody the same at the same time, at the same rate, like an Advil or a Tylenol will for a headache. And it's because you have all these different factors. And this is why everyone needs to be looked at almost like a home. You go in to walk into a home, let's say that you're looking to buy, and it's not just the home on the outside. It's not just the landscaping. It's not just the roof. It's not just the pipes. It's not just the doors and the hinges and the decor. It's the flooring. It's the HVAC. It's all the parts and pieces to this that create a home. And more so than that, there's also maintenance with a home, right? Just like there's maintenance with a car. So if we spend so much in our homes or on our homes and in our gardens and in our cars, why do we not do the same for our own bodies, which require maintenance? We're just not meant to think this way. We're not really, there's no promotion or billboard saying, hey, you need to take care of your body because it's going to be with you until you're maybe 75 or 80 years old, or maybe even more. And so this is the situation, is that things don't pop up overnight. They pop up because it's been accumulating for years and decades. So I can give you a quick example. A lot of my clients come to me and it's lo and behold, they're, maybe 45 plus years of age. And all of a sudden, this came out of nowhere. Or in my case, it came out of nowhere as well. But when I start backtracking, I can see exactly where this came from and I can start connecting the dots. And this is the beauty of working with me inside the Hair and Heal program, because you will come out of there understanding your root causes, understanding your blind spots, which we all have, and understanding your triggers, and then exactly what levers to pull so that you can avoid this for the rest of your life.
So, you're saying that even age-related hair loss doesn't have to be lived with.
Correct. Just like, for example, you don't have to have cancer even if you're 100 years old. It might be common, but it doesn't have to happen to you. Or just like any other chronic disease, it doesn't have to happen to you. We have so much tools and technology and testing that is so far superior than what we've been than what we've had access to before. And living abroad, I think this was my biggest gripe is that not only did I have these roadblocks of doctors telling me, "Oh, sorry, got nothing for you. Stop wearing your hair in a ponytail." I want to shoot them.
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
But really it's getting access to the type of testing that we have here. And I have so many clients in so many countries because there's no access. And then maybe when you do find access, the results, the report, the expertise, or even the protocols that come along with it are subpar. So that's the other thing. It's not just having the access, but it's also getting the correct protocol for that. I've had a client, for example, that I'm thinking about right now. He's Canadian. He was working with a naturopath for 6 years. He had two different types of alopecia, alopecia areata and male pattern baldness. And for 6 years, and they did quote unquote a bunch of testing, but this lady couldn't figure out why and what was going on. So he stuck with her for 6 years until, of course, he got fed up because everyone has their limit. He comes to me, and in 2 weeks, I already knew his blind spots. In 2 weeks, we already had that evaluation, and he was already on the road to recovery. He's recovered from both. And so this is the thing is that you can heal this. And a lot of times, if you're stuck or if you feel like you've plateaued or you're not getting anywhere, it could be the quality of the testing that you're doing. If you feel like you've already done a lot of testing, it could also be the practitioners that you're working with. Maybe they don't have the in-depth expertise, or maybe they're missing something. I can't tell you the amount of things that I've seen that doctors have missed from their clients, and it shows it clear night as day on their results. And I'm just like, did your doctor ever talk to you about this? Did they mention this? And it's just like, no, no. And they thought it was okay, or they didn't think it was a big deal because maybe where they're from, everyone gets it, or maybe where they're from, it's not a big deal. But as somebody who lives and breathes this and who's been working with thousands of people, like I know when's a big deal and when's not a big deal, and how every aspect of this can be influencing your trajectory with hair growth or hair loss. And so this is the thing, just because somebody says not a big deal or not necessary or can't do anything, I would always question that. And I think that's what's allowed me to have not only my own hair, but has allowed me to help others. I've always questioned the status quo. I've always questioned this no cure label. I've always questioned what is possible and what's not possible and what I can control. And when you start to realize that you can control so much, the world is your oyster. It really is. And so this is where we can leverage that control and do better for us, because really no one else is going to save us. No one else is going to come, help us, regardless of what we may be thinking, which potentially is a limiting belief of the age or this or that. There's always a way. If you have a beating heart and you want your hair, it doesn't matter how long it's been, what type of hair loss you have, where you live, what race, ethnicity you are. If you want it, there's help out there. And so it's really just about taking that action.
I've always heard that male pattern baldness has no cure, but you're saying you don't have to accept that diagnosis of being completely bald just because you have male pattern baldness.
Yes, I mean, male pattern baldness is a different animal. It's something I personally do not work with. What I've seen with male pattern baldness in general, just from research
Uh-huh.
and from friends, is that a hair transplant will take care of it. Now, just like anything, will it take care of it for everybody across the board? Maybe, maybe not. There is a very, very high success rate with male transplants. It's, I believe, 97, 98% of success rate. And there are
Wow.
countries out there, I actually have a podcast episode on this, medical tourism abroad, because it's actually cheaper to do so abroad. And so you're looking at $2,500, $3,000 for male transplant, um, treatment. And in 10 days, you're good to go. And yet, and I will say there's caveats to this too, right? Because the diet and the lifestyle need to be there. And I would say that a lot of the testing that I offer, I would actually encourage that too, because there could be other culprits to your maybe receding hairline or to your hair loss in general, especially if it's too soon. So, for example, I've had young males come to me and they're 20 years old, 21 years old. To me, that seems very young. But at the same time, it could be diet and lifestyle that's also contributing to this. So it's never just, oh, I can just get a transplant and be done. There's more to it. You want to look deeper at the situation, and diet and lifestyle, even after surgery, also dictates how well and how quickly you can recover versus not recover. And so the diet and lifestyle component is something that will support you throughout for any situation for the rest of your life. So if we have this in order, then everything else gets better just by being able to hone in onto what's been planted. But if we're using a soil and we're looking at a situation where the diet and lifestyle is not there, then the outcomes are not going to be that great either, even if it is just, a knee surgery or, a hair plant surgery or anything else.
So if I were someone who was looking at hair loss, hair thinning in my middle age, you would suggest diet and lifestyle first beyond any medications, and that could really change, make the difference in how that progresses for me.
So just to be very, very clear, I never recommend medications. To me, less is more. Today, we have statistics showing that the average American, by the time they're 40, is already on 2 prescriptions. By the time they're 65, they're on 4. These are just band-aids. They're managing a situation. They're not making you feel better. They're not curing you. They're not helping you. And the majority of the prescriptions that these Americans are on is really for chronic disease, which chronic disease can be reversed, can be helped, can be supported with diet and lifestyle. Even when clients come to me and they're like, well, I want to stay on my JAK inhibitor. Well, I want to stay on my minoxidil. Sorry, I can't work with you. I just can't, because I don't believe in the medications for hair loss. I don't believe in their effects. And really, you could be contraindicating a situation. Like if I'm trying to improve the diet and lifestyle for you and you're still on the JAK inhibitors, or if you're still on the medications, you're making the diet and lifestyle, an uphill battle. And that's actually almost counterintuitive for everything. And so a lot of these medications also suppress your immune system. Well, what's the point of me trying to boost your health and your immune system if you are suppressing it with medications? So this is making it harder for your body to see results and to actually catapult you into that next level of health and hair. So this is why I don't recommend medications. To me, less is more. And really, only if you really have to be on certain medications. And again, that's a discussion. That's really a discussion with the client and me to understand what's possible and what's not possible. And again, my philosophy is less is more, because I don't think anyone wants to be on medications for life. I don't think anyone wants to have a situation looming over their head that could worsen, for life. Everyone wants to be healthy, because as we've all probably felt in one way or another, even if it's just the flu, even if it's just a gut bug of some sort where you're in bed for a couple days, it has a ripple effect. It's taxing on the family. You become a burden. You can't go to work. You can't do your activities. You can't live the life you want. And so imagine having a chronic disease where this is your life every day. And so that's also the other perspective, is like, what are the options and what are the benefits and what are the harmful situations I can be putting myself into with me not addressing what needs to be addressed.
Mhm. I'm a huge advocate for that personal empowerment that comes from actually stepping up into your life and taking accountability and responsibility for your own actions and how they impact your health versus just outsourcing it to a pharmaceutical that is prescribed by a doctor that you're paying for, that has all kinds of side effects and may affect you systemically and in non less than desirable ways beyond what they're doing. That's one of my problems that I've had with minoxidil, is that it is a systemic drug and it goes into your whole system, and maybe it does promote some hair growth, but what is it doing for the rest of your system that needs to be in functional working order and thriving to maintain that?
I agree wholeheartedly. And really, the beauty of my story is that not only did I heal naturally, but then I had and got pregnant at 40 on the first try naturally. And so it upgraded my health, it upgraded my fertility. So there are ripple effects in a positive way as well. And so this is the beauty of being able to just get it done and get it done correctly on the right, on the right foot, the right time, and really choosing that because it's a choice. Healing is a
Hmm.
choice.
Right, right. And you have to be a participant in your own healing. You can't just be a passive bystander and wait for that to happen.
I agree. I agree.
So, is there another like raging success story you can share with us?
Wow, I have so many, so many. So my YouTube and podcast are filled with success stories, with client interviews. So you can hear their stories of, let's say, maybe the parents going through the process with their children who've gone from alopecia universalis to full hair growth. That takes around 6 months on average. It just all depends who you are. I have a client who was 26 years old, and as we were speaking here recently, a minute ago. I was thinking about all the college students have come to me, and they've come to me doing that, empowering themselves, taking responsibility, and understanding that maybe even if they were diagnosed as a kid or as a young child, it's only now at 19, 20, 25 that they're financially able or maybe deciding to heal. Maybe their parents couldn't do it for them. Maybe there was no possibilities where they lived. You just never know the circumstances. And also, I would probably say is that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there wasn't an amount of information as there is today. Now, granted, today there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of information that doesn't resonate and that's contraindicative of each other. But at the same time, information is there. Here now, is where I see these young adults either in college or just graduated, starting their life, and they come to me, they're like, I want to heal. I'm ready to do this. And I think that's a beautiful choice. That's a beautiful first step in having the choice. Because sometimes when you're 5, 10, 15 years old, it's the parents saying, okay, we're going to do this, and that's it, right? There's no other option. So yes, I do believe that's a wonderful way of being, and I see this all the time. What I also do see too is that a lot of times people linger too long in the allopathic way. So they go see a dermatologist, they go see one, and maybe they do try some medications, but then they realize real quick, this doesn't feel right, or I don't like the side effects, or it's not making me feel well, it's making things worse, or my symptoms or my hair loss isn't getting better. And even with minoxidil, even though it's FDA approved and all, it has a ton of side effects, which could compound on top of somebody who's maybe in perimenopause or going through menopause or any of these other life changes that could be, you know, just adding on to the situation. And so those success stories are just it's a huge array of men, women, and children of all different races and nationalities, all different areas in countries literally around the world, which, as you know, if anyone has traveled, you're not going to find the same food even from state to state within the US. What they have and what they eat mostly in Alaska is going to look vastly different to Tennessee or even Florida or, Texas to New York. It's all going to look very different. So you can only imagine in the world how this looks different. And yet it's very adaptable to everybody. And so this again is the beauty of being able to find a path, a strategic path that is tailored to you, customized. And so it just makes it easier step by step. These success stories, again, range from different ages and races, but then also different types of healing. So, for example, here recently, I had a client, she's also on my YouTube. She has FFA, frontal fibrosian alopecia. She just got diagnosed officially maybe about a year ago, but
Hmm.
she's had this type of hair loss for over 5, 10 years now, but it's only now as a busy wife, mom, attorney, where she's actually taking time for herself. And that's also something that I see as a pattern is that the majority of my clients are women, not just because they're, gung-ho moms, but also because they're women and women are affected significantly more with autoimmune diseases and Alzheimer's than men are. And I think there's a huge reason to that. Because we prioritize everyone else but ourselves. B,
Hmm.
because we're the caregivers to everybody. And C, because by the time we actually take a look and take a step back to say, okay, now I need time for me, not to say that it's too late, because it's never too late, but a lot of the damage has already been done. And so this is a situation that happens a lot of the time, but it's never too late. So going back to this lady with frontal fibrosian alopecia, which is a type of scarring alopecia, and it creates like a bigger forehead. So she has like a good maybe 3, 5 inches extra of forehead, but not knowing, what's scarred, what hasn't scarred, she she started the program, and in 45 days, she already saw 2.5 inches of hair growth. 2.5 inches. If you were to
Wow.
do a Google search right now, Google's only going to tell you can only grow 0.5 inch per month. And this is what I'm talking about. When it comes to autoimmune and to scarring alopecia, the growth rates are going to look different. It's not grass. This is not the way it grows for scarring or for autoimmune. It's going to grow differently and at a very rapid rate once you start supporting it.
Yes, I can see that. I can even see that in my own hair. Like I can see, wow, I've got this curl that's like 4 inches longer than this curl over here, and they were cut on the same day. So I can see that difference in hair growth. And although I can't explain it, it just feels like different locations on my head grow different rates, maybe. I don't know. Um, so what are there any other final words of advice that you can give to someone who is maybe freaking out about their own hair loss and not sure what to do about it?
So for any of you out there who are in a situation of fearing for your hair loss, feeling the uncertainty, not getting answers from your doctors, I would say pivot. I would say look at the natural option. I would say look for someone to work with that you like, that you trust, and that has the testing component for you, because diet alone is not going to work. Um, Diet is very important. It is a cornerstone and foundation to health, but it's not everything. And so this is why you need all these other pieces to the puzzle. Because, for example, at one point I didn't offer testing. And it was one of those things where I opted to start offering testing, and I realized how this helps so many people. I healed personally without any testing, not because I didn't want it, but because I didn't have access to it. And so this is also one of the reasons why I brought it in, because I understand those hurdles of being an expat or living in a country where they're like, no, you don't need it. So I'm not going to budget for it. Or, you just get these roadblocks all the time. And it's almost ludicrous to think that this is happening in Europe. And I'm telling you, it does. It happens all the time. And so this is the situation. This is why when you work with somebody, make sure that they have proper testing, functional medicine, gold star, gold standard testing. I would even go as so far as to say include the DNA test, because that is a huge, huge, huge eye opener. I got mine done a couple months ago, and when I saw the results, I see exactly how I could have avoided alopecia, how I could have avoided the cystic acne that I had in my 20s. I could have also avoided the yo-yo, dieting and the weight loss situation as a young teen, 20-year-old. And so these are the things that could have been avoided had I had a DNA test. But then also, there's a fertility panel and there's so much more in-depth information. So I could have also understood my own fertility a lot more than any doctor could be telling me, oh, you're 40 something and this is your situation. Well, now I don't have to listen to that so much and think that it's holy gospel or think that it's set in stone, because really there's so much more possibilities out there. And so fertility is another aspect that, with people with autoimmune diseases, you're going to have the likelihood of more miscarriages. You're going to have the likelihood of more fertility issues. And so this is also something that I would have wanted to know and it wasn't readily available to me at the time. I would also go on to say is that those of you with an autoimmune disease, 25% go on to acquire a second and a third. So even though you may think, oh, I'm a guy, I look good bald and I'm okay, or maybe you're a female and you're bald and you think you're okay because you've accepted it and embraced it and this is all you know, I would say think again because you're opening the door for a second and a third autoimmune disease. And I actually have clients who have up to 4 autoimmune diseases. And so this is the thing, health isn't guaranteed. Our life and the quality of life is not guaranteed. That only comes from what we put into it, from the effort, from the knowledge, and really from the strategy that we put in place. And so this is why it's necessary to understand why this is a bigger deal than just hair. In my case, it wasn't just the hair, it was all the ancillary symptoms that I was thinking that I needed to piecemeal. The dry eyes, I would go get the Visine. It was the dry skin, go get some lotion. It was, the fatigue, the insomnia, the depression, the anxiety, things that I had never felt before ever in my life. And yet it all rained down on me like a tsunami. And don't misunderstand that these things are not separate. They're calling your attention. It's a call to action to do something because your body is screaming for help.
Yes, I like to say autoimmune begets autoimmune. You have one, you are heading down the road to your next one, and it's all going to stack on top of each other as more and more things, more and more of your systems start to dysfunction and I don't want to say fail, but misfire. So that's such a good point. And I also think that a lot of medical doctors don't really know about these functional medicine tests. They weren't taught in medical school. They're not necessarily officially sanctioned by our medical world, but if you find an alternative practitioner like yourself, that can really make a huge difference because then we can see exactly what's going on and we don't have to guess. You don't have to go through that trial and error period of, oh, well, maybe this will help or maybe that will help. And, oh, well, I guess that didn't help. Well, maybe that didn't help because there were 5 other things that you weren't addressing at the same time that were inhibiting any type of progress forward because you didn't have the full picture with the tests that are now available, but not necessarily offered in your doctor's office.
100%. I think that's so key because even when I lived in the Netherlands, I looked for functional medicine doctors, and there were a few, but then you have the situation where customer service is horrific. They don't pick up the phone, or they're just, out of pocket, or maybe they don't even want to work in this field. They just did it for self-knowledge. And so it's one of those things where you don't know the expertise of anybody, even with titles, even with, certificates behind their name. And so you want to really understand that they know and they can take you to the finish line because if there's a will, I truly believe there's a way. It's either you need to carve it out like I did for myself, or you can find somebody who's already done the work and you just follow what they do.
Such good advice. So how can people find you and learn more about your programs and how you work?
You can find me on my website, alopeciaangel.com. I'm also on YouTube. I have my podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, all at Alopecia Angel.
Fantastic. Well, Johanna, thank you so much for coming on the Inflammation Investigator today. I think this has been a very enlightening conversation, and I hope a lot of our listeners found some pearls of wisdom from it that they can take to help their own lives with their own hair growth and their own fight against hair loss. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. Tune in to the next episode on the Inflammation Investigator. And that's another case filed on the Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media. at Elizabeth Yarnell or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations. They work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.